I just don't think this is like great for me. I don't want to do it. I want to go home. Like, I can't take the pressure of it.
But don't you think any job interview...
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your boy Jamsys, back at it again to show you some mid RTA content, you know, like what can you do? There's nothing too much new, because most of what's happened in last week's patch was like a quality of life patch, which was very interesting. Like the Phantasma stuff was like very interesting and not what I would expect. But yeah, there shouldn't be too many meta shakeups at this point because it looks like ML Kairon's kind of a disaster, even though I have literally been waiting for that unit for whenever Solitaria came out was when people were going on about like ML Kairon. Guys, like it's been forever. His kit looks kind of like a disaster and that's kind of a yikes, but you know, I'm definitely gonna try to pull him and make him work. But in the current game, my opponent bans Celius Lua, so it basically tells me that they're a snail and they don't like getting aggroed down. And because I'm a bad person, I pick Amid just to aggro them down. Their Bike Guy pick complicates a lot of things just because Bike Guy puts a lot of things on a timer because against squishy teams, especially ones that are AoE centric, he like really ramps up really fast after the buffs. I pick Flitica just because Flitica is one of those standard bullying extraordinaire units, especially if you're not contested in speed. And Stanny's like always cleavable, so I would pick her. My opponent decides to go for the very cursed unit of AOL here. It's been like 2 years since she came out and she still invalidates like 90% of the roster when she exists, which is not very great for me, but what can you do? They also pick Karina, one of the biggest thorns in the side for aggro players, but I decided to follow this up by picking Seaseria and picking Ludwig, just because Ludwig has a lot of combo potential when you pair him with Amid, and I have one with a really high gear score, so like why not, you know? And Seaseria is actually a unit that I would highly recommend for bullying snails. You just have to draft her really late into the draft. Like they've picked A Tywin, but at this point I really don't think A Tywin does anything to my team. So they decide to ban A Tywin. I'm pretty sure they're either going to ban Ludwig, Seaseria, or Amid to kind of disrupt my combo, but I kind of am forced to ban AOL just because I drafted so many AoE units. And since AOL cannot be stunned because, you know, fair and balanced ML4s, what can you do? They end up going for the Amid ban, which is very understandable, but it doesn't matter since I have a opener at the start with Flitica, and A Tywin does not do well into these comps which have a billion debuffs. Like he's good against comps that have like 1 or 2 debuffs, like Sage Ball or like Ida maybe, but against teams like this where it's mostly Seaseria just like locks down his whole team. I proc A Tywin's everything. I also reset A Tywin, so he's basically like a dead unit here from now on because he's not gonna be able to cycle around to another turn. And since we're also playing a very fair and balanced playstyle which carries like 10 books, we're able to soulburn everything into my opponent's team, stun his non-standing units that aren't CC'd or like not reset, I should say. And I go for the Ludwig S3 here. I would ideally want to soulburn him into something and then go for maximum damage, but I decided that I wanted to try and kill the Stenny as fast as possible because technically I'm on the one on a timer here. It doesn't do too much damage because, you know, he doesn't have an attack buff, he doesn't have anything. We go ram or something into him. This Stenny apparently is on the tankier side, or like maybe there's too much mitigation with double knights, but should be fine. They're forced to pass their turns and we got bombs onto like everyone important. And a very important part to notice here is that Steny can't soulburn unless Steny wants to die. Or like get stunned, I guess. So she is forced to just S3, but it turns out this is a lifesteal Steny, but thanks to all the debuffs we land on her, including the attack down, it won't matter too much, I'm pretty sure. And this is what I really like about Seaseria in this current meta, because the cleave has shifted away from like really heavy debuffs like iseria or whatever. So you will see that people are not as quick to whip out like your designer little beds and Edwards. So if you shoehorn them in 4 or 5, you can do really fun stuff like this. Or you just keep your opponent controlled for the rest of the game. And I decided to stun Karina just so she doesn't S3. And I do realize that does mean that LRK does get immunity up. But at this point, that was something I was willing to accept just because, if you didn't know, when bombs detonate, the damage goes through whether they have immunity or not. Like, they just don't get stunned, which is something I'm more than willing to accept. A Tywin, you know, bless him for trying. He did nothing the entire game. Gets a lucky dual attack, but thankfully Steny does not survive that, and we're able to basically hate crime our opponent for like 3 frenzies straight. And at this point, we basically won already, so I press Laika S2 for fun. And we just watch Soul and Sage Vivian finishes off my opponent's team. But with the first match pretty much all wrapped up, I would just like to say, if you like my content, please like, subscribe, maybe join my Discord, and join in with the rest of the people in the Discord in bullying me. And
you don't want to be
get a
like
nice
this.
chunk of points.
This is disgusting.
But yeah, I would say like this is one of the biggest resurgences of a unit. I would just say that if you're using Seaseria against lower teams, you can't use the old build where it's like 5.5k attack, 260 speed. I would recommend slowing her down, putting her on an effectiveness ring, and going for like 250 effectiveness so you can, you know, what's it called? Debuff Destinas or whatever. Or like maids. It might not work against people with like freak Destinas. Like I know Codex Destina has like 300 ER, and if you're trying to debuff that, like good luck, dude. But I am not. I am just in the lowly pity legend emperor tier. So that's what I use. Again, my opponent, if you see a combination of C, Lilius, Amid, or Lua, like they just don't want aggressive play. And we have to reward those picks with aggressive play because we're a bad person. And the units of choice I have for that is mainly Lua and Laika, just because they exert a lot of pressure as guiding light openers. So a lot of these like openers that counter these guiding light openers have their own counters. Like Rand, for example, has a billion counters. Peyra has a lot of counters. And a lot of these standard players aren't very comfortable, you know, speed contesting you. So this is your chance to bully them. And my Lua is on a very unique build, I would have to say, that is really showcased by this match, where she's specifically designed to eat up snails.
Today your ass
And if you look at my draft, I had to pick Sylvan Sage Vivian early just because I didn't want to commit to anything too soon and I needed souls. I picked like my 2 wall breakers at the end. I'm forced to ban Politis, and I'm pretty sure my opponent is going to ban Laika here, thinking that there's not a good way for me to proc Commander Pavel, but they are sorely mistaken if they think that is the case. What is with my opponents all roping me at the ban stage? Just ban something. Even though there's a lot to ban on my comp. But, you know, that is the nature of going first. You just have a lot more flexibility. This is what I mean by like you need a lot more disruption. You can't just let people going in front of you just have whatever they want. But yeah, on paper, it looks like I don't have a very fast way to proc Commander Pavel because like realistically, Commander Pavel is my only not Commander Pavel. Architech Laika is my only way to get some fast DPS in. Luckily, we do outspeed the Solitaria, but like my Lua is like 285. It's not that surprising. I could have gone into Sully here and got an extra target, and that would have been like another big brain play because she's on Song of Stars to counter Lilius's, but I wasn't. I don't know. I was very apprehensive of something getting pushed up because of all the cheese going around lately. But you didn't notice it, but my Lua is 100% crit Lua, and that's why she's so slow, because that's where all her stats went into. But we have one crit on the board, and with this, that's about to melt Festina. We have another crit on the board, and that means that my opponent is going to get cooked by this very interesting thief setup. Oh, man, I don't know what they were thinking about Laika. She's like Hwayoung, but better in my opinion. She's like the new age Hwayoung. That's what I'll say. I wouldn't say she's better than Hwayoung, because Hwayoung at her prime was much more unbalanced.
Detecting
but obviously, since I was on a winning streak, the game is like, oh, we need to punish this cringe cleaver by sending them up against one of the best takedown players in Epic 7. And this was like a really funny conversation I had, but I was basically streaming my Fribbles regear in my Discord server, and then one of my friends from my guild was like, bro, what's your playstyle? And I was like, or like, what are you gearing for? And I answered like, oh, RTA. And he's like, are you fucking stupid? I'm asking about your playstyle. And I was like, oh, I'm fucking dead. I'm like, aggro, yeah. And then he's like, are you sure? Because I've seen you gear like 30 cleave units in a row. And I'm like, you know what? Can you relax? But what can you do, you know? We're having Celine be picked against us unironically. We also have Maid that's like high ER. We have this like 460 gear score LRK. I'm having a very hard time thinking how I'm gonna break this draft. What I should have done is I should have picked, or my picks are like fine. Like Commander Pavel's fine, especially since my Lua's on crit set. I need a second book at this point. And I wanted to pick Architect Laika, but I can't because of the stupid Celine unit, which is somehow cucking me really hard right now, which is like very rare. And I realized that his team actually does like really poorly against Sylvan Sage Rivian as like an anchor unit, especially since I can hide steady behind it forever. He decides to pick Lone Crescent Bologna, and I'm not very scared of it. And I go for the right band at first here, especially since I have multiple ignore rest soulburns. And this LRK is on Adamant, I think, and that provides a lot. It's either on Crown or Adamant, and both of those provide a lot of mitigation. So what I should have banned is LRK or Celine here, just so I can have like the free reign to press all my buttons. But it should be fine, as long as I reset everything and buy myself enough time. But KHM is a Megalodon, whatever. He's like a Leviathan in terms of whaleness, which does not bode well for me. And this Lone Crescent Bologna is actually a really good tech into teams like this because they hit you so many times. They proc our S2 a lot, and I have a lot of targets that I need to kill, which is very unfortunate for me. We immediately get our skill node stripped off, and I'm kind of forced to go into this Celine just so I can press my buttons. And this is like, there's a lot of chokes that start to happen. I'm not gonna lie to you. We kill off Celine so we can press our Lua buttons. We go for the sleep onto LRK. I get 15% on both our debuffs. Very cool. Decide to not soulburn just so I can get, you know, my souls for Steny, except we get 15% on a bunch of stuff. So we just look like a clown. Commander Pavel, oh, he doesn't die. Okay, that's pretty good. So what I was thinking from here was that like I can try to push back his team after I kill LRK, and maybe that can buy me enough time to hopefully try and resist whatever's coming. But I guess this is like a 5,000 gear score Lone Crescent Bologna because it resists the pushback too. And I'm pretty sure they resisted, oh no, they resisted Beguile. So we still have a few turns here, but it's not looking too great for me. I need a few things to happen. I need a defense break plus target to land here, but we only get a target and we get a counter. And then we eat Lone Crescent Bologna's counter. And with Lua going down and Stenny being able to be targeted, I pretty much realize it's a done deal for me at this point. Oh no, they go for Flitica because I don't know why they go for Flitica, but it didn't really matter at this point. It's just, I'm just kind of cooked. I was hoping for Stenny to get pulled by a dual attack, but we don't get that out to win.
Yikes.
And the second this Lone Crescent Bologna presses S3 and gives APOC Vigor, we're never killing her. And unfortunately, we are eating a loss. What can you do? But this is what I mean. Like, I'm not consistent enough to play against legend players, and that's why I don't think I can make a legend climb for like at least the next few seasons until I get my account like really on track. I think the one issue for me is that I'm not very good at pivoting. I'm very, very one-dimensional, but one-dimensional in a way that isn't like super flexible either. Like if I'm like all in on aggro cleave playstyle, I should be able to like eat up like KHM or like Cyanox like at least like 50% of the time, but like my win rate against really heavy tank down players is like 33%, except for Six Duck. I have positive win rate against Six Duck, but that's about it. Anyway, in the next match, we're up against Texan. I'm pretty sure this guy was in the last video. I remember because I want to make a joke about Texas and like, you know, that SpongeBob episode where yeah, SpongeBob and Patrick make fun of Texas and like Sandy beats them up. Yeah, that one. But his bans kind of implied that he likes playing Stenny and then he doesn't like getting cleaved. Or like ignore res soulburns, I guess. But, you know, Lua's fair and balanced and fills out that niche, so we pick her. And we kind of just wait for what my opponent's going to pick. But his draft is looking mighty, mighty vulnerable to a ML Laika. Is this cleave? Like, do you guys think my playstyle is cleave? I like to think it's very flexible. But yeah, this is basically my go-to setup right now up against these people, because hand guy is getting very popular again, especially with AOL. And if you did not know, like that comp is really, really vulnerable to ML Laika or like Flitica. My opponent last picks Aiden, but I'm not scared of her like at all. I think a better pick for them would have been like Politis, because Politis really fucks up my draft. But if that happened, I just would have banned it, and then I would have killed AOL and then killed something else with Soulburn or whatever. But there's a lot of workarounds, is like my point. We ban AOL because we're not afraid of Aiden. They ban ML Laika because they are afraid of ML Laika. And yeah, I don't think they respect the crit Lua. Like, cause again, if you look at my draft from like the surface, not like surface, but like, what's it called? If you look at my draft, it doesn't look like it has a very good C Powell activator, but because I run this Lua specifically to hate crime slower players, we're fine. And my Sylvan Siege Vivian is like speed tuned to at least go in front of Destina's. We're able to sleep hand guy, which is very important, and then we soul burn and reset hand guy, so hand guy can't cleanse off the sleep and he can like S2 or S3 or whatever. And since we got one crit in at the start of this match, we get our second crit in with Sylvan Sage Vivian. I kind of like her in this way, where you use her to bait in standard picks and then just destroy them with cleave picks. We luckily hit Aiden and blow her up, but Destina can't really do anything. And I guess we gagged our opponent pretty hard here because they just kind of sit there, kind of shook, and decide to go next, which is like very understandable, well, relatable. Because he could have soul burned that S1 and tried to heal up, but my C pavel had vigor, crit damage buff, and attack up. So trying to tank that. Oh, and he's on pen set. Would have been like a very, very big challenge for them. But what can you do when you decide to play turn 2 with no disruption? Which is why I'm saying, like, as much as I hate Sage ugly because, you know, he's ugly and he's really annoying, units like him or Karina or like Degen Politics are like very necessary just to prevent others from hate criming you. But going up into our last match, I slammed down Concordilius just because, you know, somehow this unit just gets better over time despite multiple counters being released or like buffed into existence. They picked Lua AOL, which is like very annoying, very bad person vibes, but we do what we have to. I decided to pick Steny just because she's a safe book, and because their bans say that they like playing aggressively, I decided to pick my Politis here. And if you don't know, my Politis is like DPS Politis cosplaying as Degen Politis because she holds book. But yeah, my opponent's not picking anything that's resistant to debuffs, so I actually see an opportunity to go for another Seaseria type play, especially since my opponent is picking a lot of these like. Another like a good thing you didn't know about Politis is not Politis, Seaseria, is that she's actually really good into like AOL and Lua comps just because she can soul burn out of the silence and the cooldown reset. So it's like very big chilling. And my opponent actually decides to go for a Rand last pick to force me to ban it. And I'm pretty much was going to ban last anyway, no matter what. And I think they're either going to ban Concordilius or Lua. Not too sure. It kind of depends on the draft, I guess. Or like what they have in mind. But I'm forced to ban Rand just because Rand can like one-shot 2 out of 5 people on the board. They do ban Politis as expected. I just switch over all the imprints. There's nothing too immediately threatening about my opponent's team, so I'm gonna switch Steny to her self imprint, as I like to do. We luckily do outspeed this Lua by a lot, just because like Lua's mostly hang around like 295, 300 unless they're freak. But we fail the strip on to Lua, which is very, very interesting. And I'm not too sure how this match is going to go. Lua is obviously going to go for S2 into Politis into like Soulburn S3 or something. And I'm not too sure how I respond to that, especially since Seaseria is forced to wait and hold her buttons. But we do have Soul, so there's always like a wiggle room. And here we go. S2 into Politis. Soulburn your S3, sir. We all know what's coming. My guy. Hello? Okay, yeah. If you're gonna do it, like, you might as well. Like, what else are you gonna soulburn? I guess I could have soulburn LRK, but like, I'm like very, very doubtful that he's going to take a turn ever in this game, if I'm being really honest. So everything is reset, but it doesn't matter too much just because like my 2 DPS units that aren't Politis aren't very reliant on their skills, and they can always like soulburn out of it if they have to.
I don't care.
And we basically have to just apply bombs and hope for the best, which is what I'm going to do here. We bomb LRK, we bomb APOC. Luckily, due to Politis' passive, APOC doesn't push too much, but it does, you know, still cut my Steny. So that's kind of tragic. I think my opponent's going to try and finish off my Politis as soon as they can. And they do go into it. I soulburn into Steny just to soften her up a bit. And I kind of regret it. In hindsight, I think a better use for these souls would be to soulburn Seaseria just to keep the CC and trade going. But we just go for the S3 onto APOC, except we get a 15%. But it doesn't matter too much just because she's about to get stunned by a bomb the next turn she gets. So I'm not too concerned about that. Poultice dies off here, which is like quite tragic, but it should be fine. My opponent doesn't have a lot of damage left just because, you know, LRK and APOC are about to get CC'd for the rest of their short time being alive in this match. APOC gets finished off. LRK is coming up for another stun. Lua still has her cooldowns up, so I decided to add another bomb to LRK just so I can not worry about him until the game ends, and then I can like switch focus onto APOC from here on out. Lua is forced to play the S1 game along with AOL, which is like very tragic, but like they get a dual attack, which we luckily survive. And I'm not too sure what they want to do. Their plan is to pull another dual attack and kill my Seaseria. Very cool. But it should be fine now, because even if Lua does end up sleeping my Conquerlius, I don't think it matters too much just because Stenny doesn't care about cooldown reset. In fact, it kind of helps her just because it lets her hit 2 targets longer. But it is now Lua up against my Sealilius and Stenny, and so my opponent decides to tap out because there's no way Lua's even getting through Sealilius in that matchup. But yes, that's it for this week's video. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.